What's going on? Welcome to Tech with Sean, and I see a big stack of old computer parts, so you know what that means. Okay, let's check out the pieces that are going into this build, starting with the case. The case I got for $5. It's the Antec 300, and this was a pretty popular case in its day. It's got a mesh front. It's a pretty sturdy build. Nothing fancy, especially by today's standards, but it's a pretty solid beast for $5. Yeah, it came with a couple of fans in the case and the DVD burner, so you can't really beat it for that price. Really, any old case will do though. You want one big enough to hold a regular power supply and a full-size graphics card though. The motherboard we're using came out of an old office machine. It was a kind of a third party. It wasn't a Dell or an HP. It was in an Antec Lansing case. I think Altec Lansing, whatever it is. They used to make computer cases. Maybe they still do. I don't know. I think we had one back in like the 80s for our 486 system. Anyways, this Asus board from an old office machine, it's the P7H55D-M Evo. It looks pretty decent. It has a little bit of heat sinks on the VRMs. It has 4 RAM slots. These Asus boards are going to be a lot nicer to work with and a lot more compatible with different things than if you try to use like an old Dell or HP board. And this also has support for base clock overclocking in the BIOS, which I'm not sure that one of those other boards would. I want to say that ones like this you can find on eBay and stuff for around $50. So if you can get them in a bundle with old office machines that somebody's giving away for free or that are going to come with hard drives that you can use for storage or some DDR3 memory you can use, that's a way better bet. The processor in here, of course, is an interesting choice. It's the Xeon X3470, and it's basically the Xeon equivalent of the old i7 chips from that time. And this has 4 cores and 8 threads, runs at 2.93 gigahertz base clock, and this was one of the first generations to support the boost clock technology from Intel. So on 4 cores, it will turbo up to 3.2 gigahertz, which is still pretty decent for a lot of games because that's going to give you 8 threads. And then its single core boost can go all the way up to 3.6 gigahertz, so I think we're going to see some pretty decent performance in a lot of stuff. The RAM we're using is also reclaimed from old office machines. We got 4 DIMMs total. We got 2 4GB sticks and 2 2GB sticks. So that gives us 12 gigabytes total, and in DDR3 it's all going to run in dual channel. It's not like DDR4 where it gives you issues if you mix and match DIMM sizes. Running at stock speeds, you can probably get away with one of the old Intel stock coolers if you wanted to, but I happen to have a CryoRig M9i on hand, and that's like a $20-$25 cooler that you can get online. It's a newer one, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that. Thermal paste, I'm using the Thermaltake TG7. This is available. You can just get this locally at your Best Buy or whatever. It's not very expensive, but it does a really good job compared to some of the other cheaper thermal pastes that I've tried. Our operating system is going to be installed on a 120 gig SSD from SanDisk, and then I have a 1 terabyte drive that I took out of a laptop, and we're going to throw that in there for storage. Now, this is a 5400 RPM drive, so I'm interested to see how that's going to work for games. Now, this power supply, this thing is questionable at best. I want to say this might be older than the processor. This is an old Corsair TX650W, and I want to say I had this in a machine with an Athon 64X2 in it, so that was a long time ago. It's at least a decade, if not older. So I'm holding out hopes that it's going to be strong because I don't want to spend any more money on this. I'd like to make it all recycled stuff. Finally, for the graphics card, I wasn't sure which way to go. I wasn't, thinking, should we go ultra super cheap and throw in a GeForce 8600? It's not going to do much, but man, it's cheap, and it's a card somebody might have just had around at the time the chip came out. But then I thought, no, we should do a little better. So then I thought, well, we could throw in a 8800 GTS and see how that runs it. It's a big beefy card. This was a classic back in the day. This is the 640 megabyte model. But then I thought, no, let's see what this thing can really do. So we're going to throw in a GTX 1060. This is the Asus Dual. This is only the 3 gigabyte model, but we're going to be testing at 1080p, and I think this is going to do a pretty good job. So that was a rundown of the parts. Now there's nothing left to do but put it together and see how it performs. Okay, so I ran into a slight problem where the case doesn't have any 2.5-inch drive mounting support. So I figured something out on the fly. I took an old hard drive mounting thing, and I noticed that the holes kind of line up with some of the holes that are pre-built on the side of the case. So I'm going to try to install this kind of floating on there on a cut up old drive thing. And then I'm going to try something similar over here with the SSD. We'll see how it works. I don't have a lot of options unless I come up with something custom. I hit a snag on the SSD, so because of this lip, I can't hook anything up, so it worked fine on that one, but I'm going to have to figure out something else for the SSD. Not the ideal solution, but I ended up just using some 3M adhesive squares. Okay, we got it all hooked up now. Let's install Windows and see how things run.
Money that has an old computer, they've got to make work, they've got to stretch it. They can't.
So running Firestrike at the stock clocks, I got a 92 to 9300, right in that range. And then I went ahead and did a 3.8 gigahertz overclock on all cores on the CPU and a GPU overclock a little bit too. And then we broke 10,000, so that's not too bad. The only downfall of that is that the CPU on this cooler was getting really hot at 3.8 gigahertz, so I went ahead and tuned it back down to the stock clocks to run the gaming benchmarks. I was having this weird problem with the Afterburner overlay. You can see that the stock clocks are working properly and bouncing around, but for whatever reason the overlay just has it pegged at 3.06 gigahertz, so it's not accurately reporting the CPU clock. Maybe it just doesn't like the Xeon processor or thinks it's something else, who knows. So there you have it. That was a look at running some kind of AAA modern games on the now decade-old Xeon X3470. Overall, I'm really impressed with the value and the performance that we got from this. We did have a few dips here and there and things, but I think everything that we threw at it was definitely playable. Far Cry 5 held up really well on this rig for a modern resource-intensive game. I think it did a really good job keeping up with it. We were able to run Forza Horizon 4 at 1080p 60 frames per second on high settings, so that's basically like Xbox One X, so that's decent. If you're going to put something together in this vein, I would strongly suggest trying to get some older systems and piece them together rather than trying to buy the pieces a la carte, because if you can get free like waste systems or things that are going to be recycled, you're going to get a way better deal. I hope you found this interesting. It was pretty fun to make. If you like this video, give us a like, drop a comment down below, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel.